ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਨੇ ਜਰਮਨ ਚਾਂਸਲਰ ओलाफ स्कोल्स ਨਾਲ ਬਰਲਿਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਕੀਤੀ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਨੇ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ G7 ਰੈਪਿਡ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸ ਮਕੈਨਿਜ਼ਮ ਦਾ ਨਵੀਨੀਕਰਨ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਟਰੂਡੋ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਯੂਕਰੇਨ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਸਾਜ਼ੋ ਸਮਾਨ ਵਿੱਚ $50 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਵਾਧੂ ਭੇਜੇਗਾ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਰੂਸ ਅਤੇ ਯੂਕਰੇਨ ਵਿਚਾਲੇ ਬਣੇ ਹੋਏ ਤਣਾਅਪੂਰਨ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਚਰਚਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ।
So today I can announce that Canada is renewing the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism. The RRM was first introduced at the G7 in Charlevoix that we hosted 4 years ago to strengthen coordination between countries submitted to influence and disinformation from foreign actors. It responds to threats from people who want to undermine our democracies, including through disinformation. In addition, $3 million will be provided to tackle Russian disinformation about Ukraine specifically. We need to stand up for truth and be vigilant against disinformation that tries to mislead us and more tries to divide us. Today, I can announce an additional $50 million worth of equipment that we will be sending towards Ukraine to help out. But more than just the challenge in Ukraine, there's a larger challenge around protecting and standing up for our democracies, both internally and externally, and that means fighting disinformation. We need to work together to defend and strengthen democracy for everyone in our countries. Canada and Germany are aligned in our ambitious goals to reach net zero. We know that building a clean economy has the potential to expand trade, to grow the economy, and create good middle-class jobs and careers on both sides of the Atlantic. So we're working with Germany to expand the adoption of carbon pricing around the world. I was pleased to join Chancellor Scholz's G7 Climate Club proposal, because this is about building a safe, healthy future for our kids and grandkids, both with cleaner air and better opportunities for them to succeed.
ਫੈਡਰਲ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੋਰਟ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਉਮਰ ਅਲਗਬਰਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉੱਚ ਆਵਿਰਤੀ ਵਾਲੇ ਰੇਲ ਲਾਈਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਲਈ ਖਰੀਦ ਪ੍ਰਕਿਰਿਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੂਜੇ ਪੜਾਅ ਦੀ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ, ਜੋ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਨੂੰ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ, ਓਟਵਾ ਅਤੇ ਕਿਊਬਿਕ ਸਿਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਜੋੜੇਗਾ। ਅਲਗਬਰਾ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਸੈਕਟਰ ਨੂੰ ਸੰਚਾਰ ਕਰਨ ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਿੱਜੀ ਜਨਤਕ ਭਾਈਵਾਲੀ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰਸਤਾਵ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਸੱਦਾ ਦਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੰਸਦੀ ਸਕੱਤਰ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਏ।
This will invite the private sector to formally express their interest in partnering with the government to build this historic project. The request for expressions of interest describes the Government of Canada's vision for high-frequency rail and objectives to improve passenger rail service. It explains how we plan to work with the private sector and communities as the project unfolds. We want to identify our key partners who will work with us on moving forward. This request seeks responses from private sector companies with experience in complex infrastructure projects. The call for expressions of interests also outlines the government's priorities in a private sector partner. We want partners that will respect workers and protect their benefits, who will make Indigenous collaboration a cornerstone of their proposal, and who will maximize good service for Canadians. After examining the expressions of interest we will launch a formal request for qualifications and a request for proposal. With this launch, we will get closer to choosing a private partner to co-develop the high-frequency rail project.
ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਟਫੋਰਡ ਜਨਰਲ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਅਤੇ ਵਿਲੇਟ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਦੇ ਪੁਨਰ ਵਿਕਾਸ ਲਈ $2.5 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਨਿਵੇਸ਼ ਕਰੇਗੀ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ 21 ਮਾਰਚ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਸਥਾਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਮਾਸਕਿੰਗ ਦੀਆਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਟ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀਨਿਧੀ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਰਹੇ।
Today, as part of that plan, our government is delivering on our promise to bring real help to the people of Brantford. We're stepping up with investing $2.5 million to support the planning grant of Brant Community Healthcare and the major redevelopment of this project, and it's going to be a beautiful development. This is the first step of a redevelopment that will see an expanded Brantford General Hospital with a new patient tower, a renovated intensive care unit, updated surgical suites, and an improved mental health and addiction care. It will add 70 much-needed new beds to the hospital, bringing capacity to 380. This redevelopment will help put patients first and serve this growing community and everyone who calls it home. Here in Brantford and across Ontario, we're making good on our promise to end hallway health care with a historic, these are big numbers, with a historic $30.2 billion invested over the next 10 years to renovate and expand hospitals right across this province. We're bringing world-class health care to the people regardless of where they live. We're not just putting a Band-Aid on Ontario's healthcare system. We're getting shovels in the ground and investing for a stronger future for generations to come. Our province has come so far. We can't afford to go back to the politics of no. Instead, we're a government saying yes. Yes to building modern hospitals, yes to investing in our communities, and yes to building a stronger and more resilient province. Friends, let's say yes to a better and brighter future for all the people of Ontario. Friends, after 2 very, very long years, we've come so far. Now, because of the sacrifices made by every Ontarian and the amazing care provided by our healthcare heroes, we've been able to safely and cautiously reopen the province. Our government has a plan to build a stronger, more resilient province with a health system that can respond to crisis. Redevelopment for this hospital, and when communities grow like they have been, and Brantford is booming, we need to make sure that we have the new hospitals, new schools, and new roads and bridges, and that's exactly what we're doing. The advice and the recommendations of the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, he consults with the science table, and we're looking forward to the recommendations that he's putting forward at 11 o'clock today, and we're going to take his advice on the time frame moving forward with the masks. And you know, Mike, you look around the world, no matter if it's CDC down in the U.S. and the rest of the world, you know, we've been super cautious. As a matter of fact, I've been probably accused of being the most cautious leader in North America when it comes to this pandemic, but I want to be cautious.
ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਸਿਹਤ ਦੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਅਫਸਰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕਿਰਨ ਮੂਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਮਹਾਮਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰਾਂਤ ਦੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਬਾਰੇ ਇੱਕ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਪ੍ਰਦਾਨ ਕੀਤੀ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ 21 ਮਾਰਚ ਨੂੰ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ, ਰੈਸਟੋਰੈਂਟਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੋਰਾਂ ਸਮੇਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਸੈਟਿੰਗਾਂ ਲਈ ਮਾਸਕ ਲੋੜਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਅਤੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਉਪਾਅ ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ ਦੇ ਅੰਤ ਤੱਕ ਘਟਾ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ। ਜਨਤਕ ਆਵਾਜਾਈ, ਹਸਪਤਾਲਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਲੰਬੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਹੂਲਤਾਂ ਵਰਗੀਆਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਮਾਸਕਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਅਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ।
With continued improvements in trends, Ontario will remove the mandatory masking requirement for most settings on March 21st, with the exception of select settings such as public transit, healthcare settings, long-term care homes, and high-risk congregate care settings. Removing the mask mandate does not mean the risk is gone. COVID-19 transmission is still occurring across the province, and masks can help protect you and others from becoming infected with COVID-19. In fact, we can expect indicators such as cases and hospitalizations to increase slightly as Ontario increasingly interacts with one another. However, thanks to our high vaccination rates and natural immunity that is developing, as well as the arrival of other therapeutics and antivirals, Ontario has the tools necessary to manage the impacts of this virus. For those most vulnerable to the virus, it is still strongly recommended that you continue to wear a mask. And please continue to respect the masking requirements that remain in place, such as federal requirements for returning international travelers. As a society, I am asking that we remain kind, considerate, and respectful towards those who continue to choose to wear a mask. And we should all be prepared that we may need to resume mask wearing if a new variant of concern emerges, or potentially during the winter months when COVID and other respiratory viruses are likely to circulate again. On Tuesday, March 1st, I revoked the instructions for mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policies for the Ontario Public Service and for post-secondary institutions. A process is now underway to gradually revoke all directives and instructions by the end of April, with a focus on moving away from emergency measures to ongoing operations, health and public health indicators continue to remain stable or are improving in most areas of the province. The percent positivity of tests is generally stable, and new admissions to hospital and ICU have been stable or declining. We are seeing continued decreases in the numbers of outbreaks in high-risk settings such as hospitals and long-term care homes. Our wastewater surveillance is still showing the majority of sites in the province have downward or stable trends in SARS-CoV-2 detections, although we continue to see some regional variation, especially in the north, and are monitoring fluctuations in this data. With the peak of Omicron behind us, Ontario has been able to cautiously and gradually move through its reopening milestones. We are now learning to live with and manage COVID-19 for the long term. This necessitates a shift to a more balanced response to the pandemic, and changes are being made with respect to the province's pandemic response to reflect a longer-term approach.
8 ਮਾਰਚ ਵਾਲੇ ਦਿਨ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਭਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਮਹਿਲਾ ਦਿਵਸ ਮਨਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ। ਮਹਿਲਾ ਦਿਵਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਬੁਲੰਦੀਆਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਜ਼ਬਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਔਰਤ ਦੀ ਕਾਮਯਾਬੀ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਿਖਰ ਨੂੰ ਛੂਣਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ, ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਕਦਮ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਲੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਉਮਰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਤੋਂ ਸ਼ਸ਼ੀ ਟਕਸਾਲੀ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਪਾਲਣ ਪੋਸ਼ਣ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਮੁਕਤੀ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਨਪਸੰਦੀਦਾ ਖੇਡ ਟੇਬਲ ਟੈਨਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਖੇਡਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ।
When I came from work, like retirement, I was sitting home and doing nothing, sitting in the living room thinking what to do next. So I went to play table tennis. छोटा सा था वो रूम जहाँ पे खेलते थे स्क्वायर वन में, तो वहां से शुरू किया। सो फिर अब बहुत बड़ा नया खुल गया टेबल टेनिस का क्लब। It's on Haynes and Dundas and it's beautiful. And I play there. It's one of the best in, I think, Ontario or Canada even. Then we went for the Mississauga tournament. To my surprise, I got gold there. I went for prediction swimming. So I was lucky, and then gave me incentive, took lessons again, started participating again. And lucky me, every year in Mississauga swimming, I got gold 28 years ago. So, but you know, like, there's no option. So you have to go out and live your life. You get fresh air, you meet people, good for your mind, good for your thoughts, good for everything.